Hi, I'm Ralph Woodward, and you're about to see the second of three short films I made on a recent trip to Aldeburgh in Suffolk. The reason for that little jaunt was that Aldeburgh was, for many years, the home of the great composer Benjamin Britten, and it's his War Requiem that we're very much looking forward to performing in Ely Cathedral on March the 7th. These short films are excerpts from a longer film that we'll be releasing in a few weeks. This second film sees me at Britten's home discussing the texts he set in the War Requiem.
And I have in front of me an amazing document. I'm very grateful to Nick Clark in the archive here for allowing us to look at this. This is Britten's own collation of the texts for the War Requiem. So it's a notebook. I'll talk more about the notebook in a second, but it's open here at a page. It's got in Britten's writing in pencil on the left-hand side the words of the Sanctus and the Agnus Dei from the Latin Mass, and on the right-hand side the Owen poems that kind of fit into that point in the Requiem. So the whole of the text of the Latin Mass and all of the Owen poems, including ones that in the end were not used, are written down here. This particular page, it just happens to be open at the end of the piece, the end of the Agnus Dei rather, where the original text reads Dona Eis Requiem, and Britten very cunningly, I think this is actually in Peter Perse's writing, altered that to Dona Nobis Pacem, which the words Dona Nobis Pacem don't actually appear in the Requiem Mass, but give us peace seemed an appropriate thing, so he interpolated that text into the War Requiem. So this is an amazing document of Britten's working process as he pieced the texts together. Now, one detail that is, to me, quite extraordinary is this notebook is also, if you flip to the end, it's all upside down. This is Benjamin Britten's German exercise book from when he was at school. So it's got here, I'm reading it upside down, E.B. Britten, Farfield, which is the name of his schoolhouse, Holt, because he was at school at Gresham's in Holt, German. So 1928, autumn 1928, and it's got lists of nouns, general vocabulary, genders, der, die, das, verbs, plurals, and so forth. Now, this is extraordinary to me. The War Requiem was written in 1961, when Britten was nearly the age of 50, so only a little younger than I am now, and he somehow produced his old German exercise book. Now, there probably are old exercise books of mine from when I was at school in the 80s, tucked away somewhere in my parents' house, but they're not really part of my life anymore. But this document must have come just lots of blank pages and German verbs, must have followed Britten around his various house moves and ended up here. And when he was wanting to collate the text for the War Requiem, he grabbed this, out of the loft or something and used it. He was, in modern terms by then, a millionaire, so he could have had any paper he wanted, but he used this, and that's always struck me as very interesting. I can only assume that on some level he was wanting to take himself back to childhood in a way, to connect with the younger version of himself, that perhaps that's where, on some level, inspiration lived. Anyway, here it is, text of the War Requiem, and just in case you want to check on them while you're writing your masterpiece, German verbs. So I'm now in the archive, which is across the garden from the main part of the Red House. This is a wonderful building completed in 2013, where an awful lot of Britten-related material is. So the first thing I have in front of me here is Britten's copy of the poems of Wilfred Owen. It's got Britten's name and the Peter Perse and Benjamin Britten book plate in the front. And I've got it open here to Strange Meeting, which is the last Owen poem that features in the War Requiem. And as you can see, if you look at it, there are little bits of evidence here of Britten's work, and Britten's turning this into part of the War Requiem, in that there's a place where he's crossed out 4 lines and he interpolates instead a couple of lines from a previous draft of Owen's, and they're lines that in the end do feature in the War Requiem, and a tiny alteration. Instead of the line "to miss the march of this retreating world," we end up, as annotated here, with "miss we the march of this retreating world." Again, that's to sort of paper over a gap where a couple of lines have been omitted. So what's going on here really in terms of Britten's response to this is he's just snipping out little bits here and there to make it even more compact for musical setting, whereas obviously he's remaining extremely true and loyal to what Owen is saying. So I don't regard it as taking liberties so much as just making it even more brilliantly tailored for a dramatic musical setting. Another wonderful little treasure we have here, this is a letter from Wilfred Owen's brother. So Wilfred Owen was only in his early 20s when he died in the war, but his brother Harold was still alive in the 60s and corresponded with Britten. So here's a letter from Harold Owen to Britten, dated April the 25th, 1963, in which he sends to Britten as a present, in gratitude for your superbly beautiful Requiem, a manuscript draft of Owen's Anthem for Doomed Youth. Now, this is one of the very memorable poems in the War Requiem. I think it's actually the first Owen poem in the piece, and here is this, just a single piece of paper, an Owen draft. It's slightly different from its completed form as we know it from the War Requiem. The title here is Anthem for Dead Youth, whereas by the time it was published it was Anthem for Doomed Youth. The first line, what passing bells for you who die in herds. In the final score it's, I believe, what passing bells for these who die as cattle, like cattle. Sorry, I should have checked in the score. Anyway, it's a working stage of this piece, but lots of crossings out, but you can really see the piece taking hold, and some of these really memorable lines of Owen's. The last line is unaltered here, and each slow dusk a drawing down of blinds. What a beautiful line that is. So this is an amazing thing to have here, and again, I can't believe I'm allowed to touch it. There we go.